Grace is an epic coming-of-age novel set during Ireland's Great Famine. It tells the tale of Grace Coyle, a 14-year-old girl who in the opening of the book finds herself being pulled out of bed by her mother, who then cuts her hair off and tells her, "You are the strong one now." The Irish famine is just beginning, and she has to leave. But what happens is her young brother Collie runs away with her. And so begins this kind of epic Odyssean 5-year journey in which Grace will become a boy and a bandit, a penitent, and finally a woman. I wanted to tell a tale in the manner of maybe Huckleberry Finn or All the Pretty Horses, an epic coming-of-age novel with an unforgettable character at the centre. The story is an adventure, a romance, a coming-of-age story, but above all else, it's a serious look at what it means to be a person during enormous times of crisis. Ultimately, I think the novel is a story of spiritual regeneration that comes out of Ireland's darkest hour. So my first novel, Red Sky and Morning, tells the story of Paul Coyle, who is forced to flee Donegal and leave Ireland after murdering by accident the son of his landlord. And he leaves behind a young family, his pregnant wife and a daughter aged 2. And this book picks up on the story of the family from 12 years later, at the time the Great Famine is starting. How do you take on the Great Famine as a writer? Well, in many ways you have to forget what you already know. The historian works by looking backwards on events through facts. But characters move forward through their own lives, much like we do through unfolding mystery. So you have to forget about what you know, or even forget about what you think you know. In many ways, I had to decontaminate Irish history of the kind of received wisdom, the statistics, the facts, and bring it back to just, again, the mystery of life. The novelist Frederick Raphael has a line that I think is very good. He says, "The novelist is above all the historian of conscience." How do we live in a world that does not care essentially if we live or die, and yet we feel so deeply, and we hope and we despair, and we try to live our lives? This is what Grace examines. Grace, the character, is somebody who has to survive this famine, and she does. But to survive it means she has to go through enormous trauma. She has to experience enormous guilt as a survivor, and she experiences all this as an enormous silence that she cannot speak of. How do you deal with this guilt? Ultimately, the book arrives at a place of acceptance of a kind of form of secular grace, of spiritual regeneration.